Welcome back, everyone, to another video of Elite Fantasy Hoops with me, Mike Zakarian. And today we're ranking the top 20 wings heading into this NBA fantasy season. And if you're not really a wings guy, well, good news for you. We dropped the top 20 guards heading into this season last week. Go ahead, check the link that's pinned in the show notes. And of course, if this is your first time here, do me a favor, hit the little subscribe button, do the notification bell while you're at it, and smash the like. All right, now that the business is out of the way, we are going to be focusing on the wing position. We're talking small forwards, power forwards. Sometimes it includes shooting guards because we're talking about NBA best ball. Sure, a lot of this information can be used for redraft, for so rare, and even your dynasty leagues. But as we discussed in the guard video, you're seeing the guard position is so deep. There's so many talented guys you can get very late in your fantasy draft that are going to be able to contribute big time numbers for you. The wing position, it's a little bit different. Sure, we get those top tier guys that we're absolutely going to talk about, but then it falls off a cliff. So here we go. I'm going to do my best to keep each player we talk about under a minute as we hit the top 20 wings heading into the 2024-2025 NBA season. Number 20, we're heading to New Orleans after a full offseason of will they or won't they, and that's Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram coming off a pretty productive season for the Pels as he averaged 20 points, 5 boards, and 5 dimes. But as the Pelicans got eliminated from the playoffs in a 4-game sweep against the OKC Thunder, management made it clear they were planning on breaking up part of this core, and we thought we were going to see a new-look Pelicans team this season. And that's sort of true, except they didn't really move off of anybody in their core. They just added to it. As we had that blockbuster trade deal with the New Orleans Pelicans and the Atlanta Hawks that sent DeJounte Murray from A-Town down all the way to New Orleans. So the Pelicans, we have a clear idea of who their starting 4 are. Not really sure who the big man's going to be yet, but of course we've got the new look Ozempic Zion as he's thinned down this offseason. Brandon Ingram, DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, and good Lord, who's going to start at center? Is it going to be Daniel Theis, fresh off his Olympic run with Germany, or is it going to be the rookie that they took from Baylor, Yves Missi? But with the 4 guys that we listed, those all are mouths to feed. So even though Brandon Ingram did average 25 and 5, which as you'll see, statistically speaking, that's going to be better than some of the other guys that are coming up on this list. I'm a little bit nervous that maybe his usage comes down a little bit, or hey, maybe he's just a little upset with how the Pelicans organization treated him at the end of this past season. So Ingram's still a fine play. He's coming in the top 20. He can't complain too much. 19, hashtag heat culture, Jimmy Bucks, Jimmy Butler. Now, if this was just playoff basketball, we might be putting Jimmy Butler in the top 5 because he turns into Superman every spring. And Jimmy, similar to Ingram, also coming off a season where he averaged 25 and 5. However, wasn't playing too often. Jimmy Butler only played 60 of the 82 games last year for the Miami Heat. However, I do have some good news. Jimmy Butler's in a contract year, and boy, do people like to get paid. So if you want to make a case that Jimmy should be in the top 15, I'm all for it. But he's starting to get a little bit older. And part of me feels like his upside might be capped. So again, he's coming in at 19. That's not terrible. But I think I'm going to be betting on some upside from some of the other younger players that we're going to get into in just a little bit. At number 18, we're getting the first of 2 Bridges, but by far the more likable one. Mikal Bridges was true to his name as he crossed the bridge from Brooklyn to New York as he joins the New York Knicks this season alongside his friends from college, Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart. Bridges is coming off a weird year with the Nets where clearly the entire team decided to quiet quit in late November. Because that first half season with the Nets 2 seasons ago, Bridges was looking like prime Michael Jordan. This past season, averaging 19 points, 4 boards, and 3.5 assists. Now, I'm sure Knicks fans are furious because you are possessed and you probably think he should be top 10. But I feel like we're going to see Mikal Bridges turn back into what we saw in Phoenix, where he was more of this elite role player in the 3 and D aspect. Because when I think about the Knicks offense, we saw what Jalen Brunson did. They just put a C on his chest. He's the captain now. The ball is going to be in his hands. And if the ball's not in Brunson's hands, let me remind you, Julius Randle is still on this team, even though he missed the back half of last year with that shoulder injury. And he's another guy that needs the ball. So though I do think Mikal Bridges is a perfect NBA fit for what the New York Knicks are trying to do, from a fantasy perspective, I think he's fine. And even as I'm saying this list, I have Mikal Bridges at 18. You could easily make the case that he should be 20 and that Ingram and Jimmy Butler should leapfrog him. That's how close it is at this range. But with Jimmy Butler not playing a ton of games and Brandon Ingram, that weird situation in New Orleans, that gave the edge to Mikal Bridges. Now, as much as I dislike this next person as a human being, coming in at 17, it's the other Bridges. We kept them close. Miles Bridges of the Charlotte Hornets. Now, if you're not familiar with Miles Bridges' game, I recommend Googling him. Yeah, just look it up. But Miles Bridges is coming off a season where he averaged 21 points, 7 boards, and 4 dimes. We also have Brandon Miller in year 2, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. LaMelo Ball, if he can stay healthy and out of car accidents. He's back with the team, and I can't really decide. Do we think LaMelo Ball's return to the lineup and consistent basketball play, is that actually going to improve Miles Bridges' numbers? Or does maybe he's take a step back offensively, the ball won't be finding him as often? Either way, with the lack of wing depth that we have this fantasy season, Miles Bridges comes in as a fine play here at 17. At 16, we're going to be talking about the first of 2 Orlando Magic wings, and this time it's Franz Wagner. Franz had an impressive Olympic run as Germany fell just short, finishing 4th place, which sounds good, except you don't win a medal in an Olympics for 4th place. Franz just got a massive near-max extension from the Orlando Magic, and he's coming off a season where he averaged 19 points, 5 boards, and 3 dimes. Those numbers don't sound nearly as sexy as some of the other guys we talked about. I do think Franz has a clear path to upside. Franz is still only 22 years old and is continuing to grow as an offensive playmaker. One of the things that stood out last season is, for whatever reason, his 3-point field goal percentage just plummeted out of nowhere. In his rookie year in the NBA, he shot 35% from 3. In his second year, he shot 36% from 3. And then last year, weirdly enough, he shot 28%. Now, we saw the shot falling a little bit more consistently in the Olympics. And with the addition of a shooter like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to the Orlando Magic, maybe some of Franz Wagner's 3-point attempts become a little bit more wide open. And of course, with the evolution of Paolo Banchero as an offensive threat, who again we'll talk about in a little bit, I think Franz will just have an easier time on the offensive side of the game. Number 15, we're heading back to Charlotte, and thank God we don't have to talk about Miles Bridges anymore. We're looking at the second-year guy, Brandon Miller. Miller coming off a pretty impressive rookie campaign where he finished 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting behind the behemoths of Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. But he averaged 17 points, 4 boards, and 2 dimes in his rookie season. And I mentioned with Miles Bridges how LaMelo Ball coming back might impact him offensively. Maybe he's getting less shot attempts. I actually think this is going to help Brandon Miller a little bit more, because Charlotte was just kind of throwing a smorgasbord of point guards at you the entire season. And now getting an actual point guard, I think Brandon Miller benefits quite a bit. And we've got the year 2 narrative where these players always seem to take a leap in year 2. And I think in your fantasy leagues, if we're playing with, we'll say, hashtag casuals, a lot of those people are going to be clicking names like Ingram, Jimmy Butler, Mikal Bridges way before somebody like Brandon Miller. So I'm happy to get overweight on him in the offseason heading into a new year, because I have a feeling if we do this video next year, he's going to jump up a few more spots. Number 14, we're heading to Hotlanta, and it's Jalen Johnson, who averaged 16 points, 8 boards, 3 times, and then would throw in some blocks and steals here and there. Jalen Johnson really blossomed in his 3rd year, and it seemed like he was ascending to an insane second half of the year before suffering an injury that sat him out for a few weeks. But Johnson looked like he was taking a massive step. And they also removed DeJounte Murray from the equation, as he is now on the Pelicans, as we talked about earlier. And I think he's going to have to take on an even more offensive load with the Atlanta Hawks. And from a fantasy perspective, one of the nice things about rostering these Atlanta Hawks, they don't have their 1st-round pick. So we don't have to worry about them tanking down the home stretch for a 1st-round pick, because they don't have it. I still can't believe that. So I think we can expect Jalen Johnson to be the 2nd best offensive performer on that Atlanta Hawks team, just behind Trae Young. And similarly to Brandon Miller, I think Jalen Johnson is going to be selected behind a lot of the guys that we've talked about already. Number 13, it's Podcast P, Playoff P, Philadelphia P, Paul George. Now, Paul George is coming off a season with the Los Angeles Clippers where he played 74 games. And the biggest question of Paul George, which could bump him up 3 spots for you or even bump him down 3 spots, is, do you think he can replicate this? Historically, Paul George has always battled some injuries, so I don't know if he's going to be able to produce the same amount of playing time that we saw last year. And there's also one other ding against him, which is why he's down as low as he is for me. And it's not just switching teams, but he's going to a team where Joel Embiid is clearly the best player on the team and is going to be taking up a lot of that offensive usage. And also Tyrese Maxey. Maxey, who blossomed last season, making his 1st NBA All-Star team. To me, Paul George is clearly the 3rd best guy on this team. Now, it doesn't mean he's not useful as a fantasy player. I think on name alone, he might be getting drafted a little bit earlier than he should be. But still, it's no disrespect to PG, who's coming in at 13. Number 12, another guy that landed in a new space. Like the beam, DeMar DeRozan has gone from Chicago to Sacramento. One thing that blew my mind last year, DeMar DeRozan played 79 of 82 games. He's not a young chicken either. He's been around for a little bit. And in those 79 games, he averaged 24 points, 5 boards, and 5 dimes. But the biggest question connection with DDR, and I'm not talking about Dance Dance Revolution, although we could do a separate video on that if you'd like, is how is he going to fit in with this offense? There's part of me that's very excited. The glass half full. He's now on a team that is a run and gun style offense with De'Aaron Fox sprinting up and down, Malik Monk coming off the bench and just chucking, and then obviously Domantas Sabonis, who is an amazing offensive threat and a sieve on defense. Now, if DeMar just fits into that seamlessly, that means all of a sudden he's going to be playing at a much faster pace. That means more shots. That means more points. All good. Except DeMar DeRozan historically does not play that brand of basketball, right? DDR is a guy that gets to his spots and hits long twos, which is no disrespect to DDR, but it's going to be interesting to see how his game meshes with the Sacramento Kings offense. But again, I trust DeMar DeRozan to be out there. I feel like you could put him in any sort of basketball environment and the dude is going to get 20 points a game. And like we said, he's a workhorse. The dude plays. In the last 3 seasons, he's played 79 games, 74 games, and 76. Number 11, just missing the top 10, is the Thin. Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. Lauri made an all-star team 2 years ago, coming off another impressive year for the Jazz, where he averaged 23 points and 8 rebounds. And I honestly was tempted to put Lauri Markkanen into the top 10. But the one thing we have to worry about is the Utah Jazz are trying as hard as they can not to win games. There's a white guy projected to go number 1 overall in next year's draft. So yeah, Utah Jazz are going to be tanking. Lauri only played 55 games last season, and it feels like he's probably only going to play 55 games again this season. And we know he's not a trade candidate because, as every podcast talked about for 2 straight months, because he signed his extension after August 6th, he's not eligible to be traded by the Utah Jazz until next season. So there's a chance that Lauri Markkanen is a top 7 wing in all of fantasy basketball heading into the All-Star game break, and then still finishes probably 18th, 19th, or 20th because he barely plays from February on. So with that argument alone, maybe number 11 is too high, but I do still think there's real value in the elite fantasy output he's going to be displaying early on in the season. It just means that if you are taking somebody like Lauri Markkanen in best ball or redraft or so rare or whatever, to make sure that you have a backup plan heading later into the season, whether that's taking shots on rookies on teams that you know are bad and that will be tanking as well, so that you know that they're going to be playing way more minutes down the stretch, or if it's just drafting more wings than normal, just so you have better depth. Number 10, the Claw, Kawhi Leonard. Now, Kawhi might be the most controversial wing on this entire list because you could make a case that he's going to be a top 3 wing in the league, or that he's only going to play 22 games the entire season. A couple things going for Kawhi. He's coming off one of his healthier seasons of his career. He played 68 games. In those 68 games, he averaged 23 points, 6 boards, and 3 times. The Clippers, as we've already talked about, have moved off of Paul George. They didn't bring back another star. They brought back a lot of role players. So it seems like a lot of the offensive usage is going to be coming from 2 guys on the Clippers, James Harden in the guard position, and then Kawhi Leonard from the wing. Some more good news, like the Atlanta Hawks, the Los Angeles Clippers are giving first-round picks to the OKC Thunder from now until 2099. So the Clippers can't tank, even though this West is so competitive and they're probably going to be around the play-in game area. They won't have an opportunity to pull the plug. They will be trying this entire season. So we don't have to worry about him getting rested for tanking. And Kawhi Leonard dropped out of the Olympics, so we don't have to worry about all of the extra minutes and wear and tear that he would have put on during the offseason. Instead, he can come into camp healthy in the new Intuit Dome where everybody gets their own toilet. Now, I can't believe we got this deep into the video without a drop, but at number 9... regular season Randall. Bing Bong Boy himself, Julius Randle. Who would have thought 2 Knicks on this list? Now, health is always a concern with Orange Julius, as we know he missed a ton of games last season with the shoulder injury, but when he was playing last season, he was averaging 24 points, 9 boards, and 5 dimes. Now, there's still a question mark of how this offense is going to look. We already talked about Mikal Bridges being added. We know OG Anunoby is coming back in, but there have been very few times where Julius Randle has been on the court and not been a fantasy point per minute producer. So even though it seems nutso to be taking somebody like Julius Randle over names like Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, Brandon Ingram, Mikal Bridges, all the other names that we've mentioned, he's still a fantasy god. Sure, maybe you would take some of those guys on your team to try to go win a playoff series, but we're not trying to win actual playoff series. We're trying to win fantasy playoff series. All right, coming in at number 8. My guy just dropped bars yesterday, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown coming off not only an Eastern Conference Finals MVP, an NBA Finals MVP, some crazy tweets. He didn't play in the Olympics, but he's off a season where he averaged 23 points, 5 boards, and almost 4 assists. I think there's a real case to be made that Jaylen Brown could end up finishing top 5 this season in wings. But I'm not bold as I need to be for videos like this, so I played it safe and left him at 8. But the case for Jaylen Brown is he's continued to get better each and every year. Now, normally after a team wins a title, maybe they take their foot off the gas. But between Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, they both seem like they are mad as hell heading into this next season, as JB was left off the Olympic team and was very upset about it. I also think he's going to benefit from the absence of Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis for the Celtics last season averaged over 20 points and 7 boards. I think for the Celtics to continue to be successful this upcoming season, that's 20 more points that go around, but more importantly, they're going to have to rebound a little bit better. Because you know Al Horford's already not going to be playing those back-to-backs because that dude's almost my age and he can't be playing that many minutes. And the only other guys they have rebounding besides Tatum and Brown, Luke Cornett, you know? So I think JB has a chance to boost up his boards, I would say almost 2 a game, to put him at 7 boards a game. And again, I can't stress enough, he seems like he's ready to take on the world this season. All right, number 7, the Indiana Pacers, Spicy P. Siakam's going to be heading into his first full season with the Pacers after an impressive second half of the season as they went on their Eastern Conference Finals run. Now, Siakam last season averaged 21.7 boards and 5 dimes, and I think that has room to grow because he's playing next to the guy, Tyrese Halliburton, who is a one-man offensive wrecking machine. Now, some might say if Hallie's healthy, maybe Siakam's not getting the same amount of shots. I just don't think that's true. I think the two-man game of Hallie and Siakam has a chance to grow even further. And Siakam's in a good rebounding situation with this Pacers team where he's really only competing with Miles Turner. Number 6, and people are going to be furious I kept him out of the top 5, except for, half of NBA Twitter who hates this man, and that's LeBron James. I can't believe heading into year 50 for LeBron as he's about to turn 40, he's still a top 6 wing in the entire league when we're talking about fantasy sports. But at age 39, LeBron James played 70 games for the Los Angeles Lakers, averaging 25 points, 7 boards, and 8 dimes a game. And truly, there's a case that he should be top 3. But at some point, he can't be playing all these games, right? He has to slow down at some point, right? So I'm going to put LeBron at 6. Clearly, he still has a solid floor and pretty good upside, but I'm a little bit nervous that the Lakers might be bad. Again, the West is just so freaking competitive, and I know we saw LeBron and AD lift the gold medal this season, and you would think if you had 2 contributing players from Team USA winning gold medal, that their team could actually make a playoff run, but shout out Rob Pelinka, baby, not those Los Angeles Lakers. So I'm going to put LeBron at 6, and who knows, maybe LeBron's playing with the Golden State Warriors before the end of the season. Check out Steph Curry's Instagram. Number 5, King Troll, easy money sniper, Kevin Durant. KD played 75 games last season, and that blew me away. I just assumed it was like 65. KD's coming off a season where he averaged 27 points, 6.5 boards. Did he really average 5 dimes? And 5 dimes a game. Did you know Kevin Durant was averaging 5 assists a game? Well, the Phoenix Suns have now added Tyus Jones to the team, an actual real point guard. And I know they brought Coach Budenholzer over there, who's supposed to be a defensive wizard. I don't know how this team's going to play great defense because you get Tyus Jones starting at the 1, Devin Booker at the 2, who we saw turn into a defensive juggernaut guarding guards in the Olympics. But then you have Bradley Beal defending at the 3, and that just seems like a nightmare. KD at the 4, who's still a very solid defender, but then Yusuf Nurkic at the 5, not really known as a defender. Sure, he's a good rebounder, but I wouldn't say defense. So I feel like the Phoenix Suns are going to be in high scoring games. And I don't know, KD just seems happy and healthy, right? Give me a happy KD. I'm going to put him at number 5. And I'm starting to feel bullish on the Phoenix Suns, and it feels gross. Number 4, we're heading north of the border. Scottie Barnes. Now, the Raptors are in a weird spot, and the only thing that's making me nervous is it feels like their entire season could be over by January 1st, but Masai has made it clear the Raptors don't like to tank. And I'm sort of intrigued. If you've watched the guard video that we did last week, we talked about Emmanuel quickly. I kind of like what RJ Barrett's been doing, and I think this might be the year that Scottie Barnes takes a real leap. Last season, he averaged 19 points, 8 boards, and 6 dimes. They've now added a real point guard in Emmanuel Quickly. That doesn't mean we won't see point forward Barnes, but it's not the only option, which I do think is a good thing for Scottie Barnes. But what I really like about Scottie is he also throws in those steals and blocks, averaging 1.2 steals per game and 1.2 blocks per game last season. So I'm going to go out on a limb right now. I think Scottie Barnes is going to average a double-double next season, and that's why I have him as high as he is. I'm going to say it's going to be 20 points, 10 boards, and 6 dimes a game. There you go. That's Scottie Barnes' line. Take it to the bank. Number 3, the Florida Italian, Paolo Banchero. Paolo in year 2, only year 2, came off a very impressive season. He averaged 22 points, 7 boards, and 5 dimes a game. Took the Orlando Magic to the brink of getting out of the first round after they lost that brutal Game 7 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But as I mentioned when we were talking about Franz Wagner, you had the shooting in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You had the natural growth that you're going to get from year 2 to year 3 from Paolo. I feel like we might see Paolo average close to 26, 27 points per game this season. He's young, he's durable, and he is the 3rd best wing heading into this fantasy NBA season. 2 to go. We can run through these quickly because these are no-brainers. At number 2, Steve Kerr might not put him in the game, but it's Boston Celtics' finest Jayson Tatum kid. Now, a lot of the stuff I said about Jaylen Brown, you could say about Jayson Tatum as well. You would think after winning the NBA Finals, finally taking that monkey off the back, that they could celebrate, take your foot off the gas a little bit. Instead, the entire world makes fun of you for 2 weeks because Steve Kerr doesn't think you should be playing any minutes. And now you get to let that fuel build in you. I'll be honest, Tatum is probably the 2nd best wing in this fantasy season without all of that stuff, but it makes me a little bit more excited to roster him this year. Tatum is coming off a season where he averaged 27 points, 8 boards, and 5 dimes. I'm not going to regurgitate all the stuff I said about Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis, but that also impacts him as well. I mentioned I think Scotty Barnes might average a double-double. I think we might see that from Jayson Tatum. And if you listen to a bunch of player podcasts, maybe they think he wins MVP this season. I don't, but it's a fun thing to think about. And then drum roll, please. Number 1, the Greek, the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis. The Bucks have been disappointing in the playoffs for sure the last couple of seasons, but Giannis is not really disappointed from the fantasy perspective. He averaged over 30 points last season, over 11 boards, and almost 7 assists per game. And that was with Damian Lillard and Giannis not really figuring out how to play together. Now, as Doc Rivers had said, Damian Lillard was actually allowed to work out in the offseason. They've had a year under their belt. They're mad that everybody's forgotten how good they are. You listen to everybody talk about the East. It's the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks. If I was Bill Simmons, I would say nobody believes in us. So Giannis is the clear-cut number 1 wing that you need for your fantasy NBA season. There you have it. That's our top 20. We've done guards, we've done wings, which means our next video coming out next week, we're going to do the top 20 bigs heading into the NBA season. All right, now that we got through the list, let me know how mad you are. What did we mess up? Drop it in the comments. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Get that notification bell hit so you know when the next sweet piece of content drops. And we'll see you next time.